to play. Warriors, come out to play. Warriors, come out to play.
In Africa, I had a reason to be born there. So we have a God. We have our gods and we have our mode of worship.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we ain't trap brown. All my brothers, put your hand on the chest now.
Freedom's what we need, more solutions is the key. Wave the banner of the free, that's the red, black, and green. Bringing truth to the streets, water get no enemy. If it's peace, we at ease. If it's war, we don't cease. EYE's on the crackers and police. Never slack up even when we free, cause we ain't free until we get the land, that's the green. Black power, new African, liberated from the thieves, nothing better else to be.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we ain't trap brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
Stimulated cause I'm liberated. Rock me African medallion in the middle of the clan. Situation freedom come drum playing by the river. I deliver for my people. It's the sequel of revenge. My friends get ready. Every knee shall bow. Every tongue shall tell. On the mountain I reveal. Throw the shells. 4 lights side up. Dark one up in my cup. Pour it out and then I strut. Alafia dear.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we ain't trap brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
When the African doesn't want to understand or participate in the reason why he was born,
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we ain't trap brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
see, Africa has not been able to contribute its own knowledge to this universe. But we have knowledge in Africa. You understand?
Yeah, of course.
You see, so all these things need to be in the education system of the African countries.
Hey, peace to everybody out there, man. Like the show, share the show, tell a friend, we live. It's your boy Sean P. In a place to be. I want to get into a little West African history. In a sense. I want to talk about Mali specifically. In a sense, more specifically, I want to talk about Sundiata, the Lion King. I want to go a little bit more in depth. But I wanted to share some stuff with everybody. So in the description of the video, I actually put in some sources referring to Sundiata from the eyes of a Jole, and we'll get into the terminology and all of those things. And we'll also get into the epic, which is important when referring to the griot's storytelling and the history of Mali, and especially with Sundiata, who is by far revered as the greatest ruler of Malian history. I also want to add to that um, the Tariq al-Fatish. I can do the Tariq al-Sudan, but the Tariq al-Fatish, let me open it up for y'all real quick. The Fatish has, information on him as well, and well, not the Fatish, my bad. The Sudan. I just want to kind of like get into some certain things, but I might refer back to it because there's something that is mentioned in there that is important regarding Sundiata. However, what's going on? How everybody doing? Hope all is well. Yeah, afternoon with the Masi. But again, like the show, share the show, tell a friend, we're actually live. Let me grab this other text real quick and we're gonna get it cracking because I know some of y'all are working and I don't get you fired. Definitely don't want to get you fired. Understand me? But before I do say anything, man, how familiar are any of you with Malian Empire and its history? I know there's a delay, so I'm waiting a little bit. And for those of you who are catching the replay, you probably are coming in like, what are you talking about? But let's get to the business. I don't know where about it. Not really worried about it, but probably see some Masa members show up. What I want to go with first. All right. Boom. All right, you should be able to see my screen right now. Let me check YouTube. Okay, cool. Let me zoom in. Good on the old eyes. It should be big enough for you to read from your cell phone if you got a 10-inch screen or better or lower. If you got a bigger screen than that, then you should be cool. All right, so this story is told by a Jele. A Jele is a griot. A griot is an oral historian of West Africa. You see it in the first line. So let's just be clear. So when you see this in any history books referring to Jele, they are referring to a griot. A griot is an oral historian of West Africa. That's why you see Kofi, he has inserted the griot name into his descriptions of many names that he now calls himself. However, Sundiata, also known as Sundiata, was an actual person, right? It's not fictitious. He's the first king of Mali, born in 1210 AD. The Battle of Karina, which is told about at the end of the story, took place in 1235 AD. The version is abridged and adapted from 3 written versions of the Epic of Sundiata, and with information and support from Yassine Coyote. I'm saying that name wrong, butchering it, from Mali. All right. Now, you see there's a quote from Yassine, and it says, playing a kora, often used by Jele in the storytelling of the Epic of Sundiata. So you see him right here. This is Yassine. Let me see if I can zoom in for the audience so that you can get a better look at the brother Yassine. So there you go. You should be able to see him pretty smoothly. There you go. Yeah, you got old eyes. Why you sitting there laughing? All right, so here's part one of the story from the Jele, aka the Griot. I am a Jele, master of the art of eloquence, descendant of the royal historians. Since the time immemorial, my family has been in the service of princes of Mali. We are the vessels of history and hold in our minds the secrets of many centuries. Through our speech, we bring to life the valiant deeds of kings to younger generations. I teach kings the history of their ancestors, so the lives of the ancients may guide them. I shall teach you your history, so you may be guided too. I shall teach you of our time of greatness. The past is only the seed of the future. Listen, children of Mali, don't doubt my words. What I say is what it was told to me by my father and what was told by his father to him, and so on through generations. We are sworn to pass on our stories as we learn them. Now listen to the story of Sundiata, the Lion King of Mali, as it was told from time beyond memory. Sundiata, the father of the bright country, the master of 100 conquered kings. Sundiata, great among kings and peerless among men, beloved of Allah, for he was the last of the great conquerors. Sundiata, the greatest in a great line of kings. So here you have a statue, right? Commemorating. This is out of a museum. And this is basically what it says. We need to make it clear. The first kings of Mali were not indigenous. They came from the east. Listen to this, okay? I gotta be clear about this. This is where we see Arab influence on oral tradition and the history of Mali. They came from the east and were descendants of a faithful servant of the Prophet Muhammad. May peace be of Allah be upon him. It was this lineage that held the power and that they were initiated into the arts of hunting and healing. It was through them that their people conquered the neighbor lands, and they became kings of a vast empire known as Mali. From this noble line came Magan, the handsome father of Sundiata. Magan had 3 wives and 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. His first wife was the beautiful Sassama. The second wife was Sogolo, the buffalo woman, the mother of Sundiata. Now, return now to the time before Sundiata, the Lion King, was born before the united territories of ethnic groups of Mali into a mighty empire. Return to the savannah along the river before Sundiata's mother and father had met. Now, that's the beginning. All right. They gave you a brief description of where the people claimed to descend from and who his father and mother was. So we have the name of his mother, father, right? And then we know the count of his siblings, and we know of the father's first wife. All right. So King Magan was renowned for his good deeds, looks in every land, but he also was a good king and loved by all the people. In his capital of Niani, he loved to sit under the great shading arms of the silk cotton tree which dominated the royal yard of his great clay palace. Here he could enjoy the shade and the breeze during the hottest times. Unlike his subjects, he could not go down the river to get cool. As was the custom, the king would only present himself to the people on special occasions, so he was somewhat isolated within the royal fences. His Jale was with him singing his praises while playing on a 3-string guitar. Servants waited upon him and fanned him, chasing away the flies. Magan's beautiful wife Sasomi was in the palace, pregnant with the second child. His only son, Denkaran, was already 8 years old and often came to sit in the ox hide beside his father. As he sat in the shade of the mighty silk cotton tree, a hunter from far away approached carrying an offering of meat. Since the hunter had killed an animal on the king's land, he was obligated by custom to give the king part of the animal. His garments were covered with the cowrie shells, which showed him to be a master in the art of hunting. He wore a reddish brown skull cap over his gray hair braided in the fashion of the hunters of the land. These hunters were known as the great soothsayers or fortune tellers as well. The man walked up to the king and bowed. I salute you, king, and bring you part of the animal I have killed on your land. The Jaleh of the king spoke for his master. Welcome, stranger, and thank you for observing our customs. You have traveled far. Sit and share with us some stories of our neighboring lands. The hunter came and sat down upon the mat. He said, I am not a teller of tales. I do not spin adventurers' yarns nor trick my listeners without a golden tongue, but I can boast of being a seer among the best. He took 12 cowrie shells out of his hunting bag, raised them to his mouth, and murmured an incantation. Then he threw the shells before him on the mat, as you can see in the image on the right hand side. He looked at them for a long time, studying the way they fell and the patterns that they made. Let me pause real quick. What do you think he's doing? If he got 12 shells in his hands, he murmurs to them an incantation, shakes them like he's shooting the dice, roll them on the mat. $5 yo. A pattern reveals itself. What do you think he's doing? Just let me know. What up, Kent? There you go. Chavis just said it. So then he addressed the king. O great ruler of our world is full of mystery. Great things come from small. The silk-colored tree springs from a tiny seed. Kingdoms are like trees. Some will become great and others will remain like dwarf palms. Mighty rivers begin in small streams. And who can recognize in the little child the great king to come? Know this, King Magan, your land is about to emerge from the night. The Jaleh of the king was puzzled and said, Hunter, your words are strange. Make them as clear to us as the savannas of our land. O king, listen to my message. Your successor is not yet born. He said, trying to avoid the eyes of the king, who looked apprehensively at his son while stroking his beard. I see two hunters coming to your city. They have come from afar. A woman comes with them. Oh, that woman? She is ugly. Oh, her back is a hump and giving her appearance of a buffalo. Her eyes are mishappen too. But this is the woman you must marry, for she will be the mother of the one who will make the name of your family immortal. This son will be mightier than all of who have preceded him. The hunter picked up the cowrie shells and returned them to his bag. I am only passing through, and now I must return. The king laughed as if to appear that he was not listening deeply to the hunter's words, and he said, Don't you have any other stories for the king? The hunter replied, I have spoken not to entertain, sir, but only after you sacrifice a red bull calf and let his blood seep deep into the soil will this girl come. Farewell, great king. I am I am but a passing stranger. The hunter disappeared down the trail, but the king did not forget his words, and later that day ordered the sacrifice of the red bull calf. Gossip of the strangers and the words were spread throughout the palace. News of a prediction were met with fear by Sasoma, the queen of the mother of the 8-year-old in Dakara, whom she wanted to become the next king. The seer's words were disturbing to her as they were attractive to her husband. Did Magan not want to be remembered as the father of a powerful ruler? Did he not want to take more wives and have more children? Such were the thoughts of the king and queen. So real quick, this whole ancient, I'm not calling this ancient, but when you look back at historical times, and if you're familiar with TV, like watching, these movies like Game of Thrones and um stuff like that, like Game of Thrones, right? You see throughout every series, when something transpires, someone is plotting to usurp and get to the throne, whether it be the servant of the king and his daughter plotting to get with the king, You know what I mean? Or whether it be the current queen, um, who was the first wife, trying to make sure that the second wife doesn't have a boar, a male, right? You see this usurpation coming through in many different ways, or the plot to usurp, right? Or to reign as ruler. It's the same thing, analogy wise, when you look at how things come to be. So when the first wife catches wind to this, she on 10. She plotting. Her wheels are spinning because she wants this for her son. Her son, not even knowing, her son might not even want to be king, might not even want to rule. But for her, she is empowered when he sits at the throne, right? And so behind all of that, she gets all of, praise, recognition, and the ability to sit up there on the throne and look like she almighty and yada yada yada. But in return, um, you'll have something like the second wife who might bore a son, whose son is of age and, you know, and probably will be a better fit or might not be a better fit. So you might have her and him plotting, or her plotting to do something to the oldest son, just so her son can reign. It's a messy business when it comes to this kinship. Basically, is what I'm trying to get at. So let's get into part. Let's get into part two. I mean three. My bad. All right, so after the harvest season in the neighboring land, two brothers, Olumba and Olani, were eager for traveling and hunting. They were dressed in hunters' narrow trousers and a wide range of long overgarment dyed by boots and red bark to reddish brown. They were barefoot, but also to cross the terrain, and each had a hunter's whistle to signal across great distances. They carried a quiver of arrows and a bow, and their leather hunting bags were covered with cowries, testaments to kills they had made on behalf of the village. The youths were strong and slender and anxious to prove their skills to the people of the village. As was the custom, the young hunters consulted a soothsayer before traveling abroad. In the images that we have below, you see the hunter's gear. If you've paid any attention to the Master Warrior Clan channel or Kofi Pi site over the last 5 years or so, something like that, you would recognize that those garments have special meanings and sentiments, but also the things that are attached to it are protectorants against certain spells and or can cast. It's real, it's got some real deep meaning behind those. So you need to make sure that if you're not familiar with those garments, that you get familiar with those things. Now, the soothsayer wished them well on their trip and said, "Remember well to befriend the hungry and to keep your word. If you do, great honor will come to you." The two brothers thanked the soothsayer and set out on the trail. 2 days' journey beyond their village, they met two other brothers, one whom was brutally wounded, and the young farmers feared that the other would not survive. His legs had been torn apart by the sharp horns of a wild buffalo. An amazing buffalo was ravaging the countryside of the Daw, and a daily it claimed some victims. The brothers learned, that no one dared leave the village after sunset, and none of the fields were safe from the destruction of the marauding animal. The leader of the Dow had promised a fine reward to the hunter who killed the buffalo and rid the village of this curse. The two brothers decided to try their luck and therefore advanced deep into the land where the buffalo had caused its destruction. Rarely they pursued the buffalo, and by chance came upon an old woman by the side of a river. Now, they're by the river. She was weeping and lamenting. She was thin and frail and with white hair, and her skin was wrinkled and scaly like a lizard's. She beseeched the young hunters for something to eat. Touched by her tears and remembered the advice of the soothsayer, the younger brother approached and gave her some dried meat with the hunter's bag. When she had eaten well, she smiled broadly, showing her gums and her few remaining teeth. She said, "May Allah return to you the charity within you have shown me." They were getting ready to leave when the old woman stopped them. "I know that you're going to try your luck against the buffalo of Dow, but you should know that many others before you have met their death through their foolishness. Arrows are quite useless against the buffalo because of its thick hide. But, young hunters, your hearts are generous, and it is you who will vanquish the buffalo. I am the buffalo you are looking for, and your generosity has vanquished me. I have killed 107 hunters and wounded 77 more. Every day I kill an inhabitant of the Tao. But now my anger against my brother has run its course. I have punished my brother enough for depriving me of a part of the inheritance from our parents. Are you paying attention to the story? He has taken my land, my home, and all my possessions and turned me out of my village, and now he will have my life. She spoke and was reassigned to her death, which would soon come. Here, take this staff, this rock, and this egg, and go to the plain over there where I browse among the king's crops. Before using your bow, you must take the aim at me 3 times with this staff. Then draw your bow, and I shall be vulnerable to your arrow. I shall fall, but shall get up and pursue you. But you will eventually kill me. As a proof of your victory, you must cut off the buffalo's tail and bring it to the king of Tao, who is my brother. Crazy with joy, the brother seized the staff, the rock, the egg, but the old woman stopped them from a gesture and said, "There is one condition." "What is that?" the older brother asked impatiently. "The king promises the hand of the most beautiful maiden of the Tao to victory. When all the people of the Tao gather and you are told to choose among the beautiful maidens of the village, you must search in the crowd until you find a very ugly maiden, uglier than you can imagine, sitting apart on the observation platform. You must choose her, for she is my spirit double. She will be extraordinary woman for the man who was able to possess her. Swear to me that you will choose her, hunters." The young brothers promised and eagerly took the staff, rock, egg, and from the older woman. The older brother was suspicious of her, but said nothing until they were out of her sight. "She is only leading us to our death," he said. "Then I will die like a brave warrior, not a coward," he said. "Let's go." And the two brothers continued on the plain of Tao. See how it's coming together? It gets interesting. What's up, Bobby? Right? Yeah, y'all late. Yeah, I'm on my hunter gathering. Yeah, for real. Now, let's get to part 4. So, out of the plain of the Dow, the two young hunters saw a browsing buffalo with a black hide and a silver horns. The older brother became frightened and didn't trust the old woman's powers and tried to convince his younger brother to turn around. But the woman's powers and tried to convince his younger brother to turn around. But the younger brother advanced cautiously, stooping to the hide himself in a tall grass. Then the buffalo raised his head and saw the younger brother, the young hunter. It bellowed, lowered its mighty head, and charged. The hunter took the staff, pointed at the buffalo 3 times. The buffalo hesitated, and the hunter shot an arrow into a massive neck. The arrow seemed only to inflame the buffalo, and it charged again. Turning to run toward the hunter, tossed the staff behind him, and up sprang a forest of bamboo. The buffalo could not maneuver easily through the forest, and the hunter was able to escape the plain once more. The older brother quickly climbed a tree to avoid being killed. Once again, out of the plain, the buffalo pursued the young hunter. With his horns nearly tearing into the body, the hunter tossed the rock behind him, and in plain sight was transformed into an immense labyrinth of stones. The buffalo was again delayed while the hunter hurtled like a meteor across the plain, and it was at a rabbit's feet had sprouted. So swiftly did he run. Then the buffalo once again was able to bear down on the hunter, and almost exhausted, he reached the egg in his bag and let it fall behind him. The plain was transformed into a muddy marsh, and the buffalo fell into the clinging mere. The hunter took his bow again and shot the buffalo, and this time killed it. He took his hunter's whistle and signaled his successors. His older brother climbed down from the tree and congratulated him. They cut off the buffalo's tail and headed to the village of Tao. The brothers arrow at the village of Tao to meet arrived at the village of Tao to meet the king. The drums spread the joyful news throughout the land, and the buffalo had been slain. And soon, fathers accompanied by daughters and marriageable aides came to the village. The next morning, everyone was gathered in the main square. Young children perched like grasshoppers on the branches of the trees, say, gazing at the festivities. A platform had been built for the king's family. The square was filled with the exciting throng that circled the carcass of the buffalo that had been brought there. The hunters' names, Olambe and Olani, were sung by the crowd in the praise of their great deed. Others whose relatives had been killed by the buffalo shrieked insults at the mutilated body. Drums and hunters' guitars joined the voices in their praises. The dances were punctuated by foot stomping and clapping. When the king appeared at a deep silence settled the crowd. Next to him was his Jaleh, griot, and two hunters. The beauty of the two young hunters set every woman daydreaming that she might be the one chosen. The griot, the Jaleh, spoke directly for the king, who remained silent. The buffalo is dead. And here's the hunter, Oyame, who killed it. I promise the most beautiful women in marriage as a reward. Great hunter, look upon the daughters of the Tao and take your pick. The crowd cheered its approval, and the young hunter was exhilarated by the beauty which was arrayed before him. The maidens wore festive dress and gold shone, and their hair and their fragile wrists bent under their weight of bracelets. Smiling teeth as white as rice vied for the hunter's attention. As he walked among the crowd, he wondered how he could decide among such loveliness. But overhead, a hawk appeared, and after circling, plummeted the tree, times over platinum. The hunter remembered the words of the old woman and tore his eyes from the smiling beauties. On the raised platform, he spotted Sogolon with a humpback and bulging eyes, partially hidden by a veil pulled shyly across her face. The hunter elbowed his way through the crowd, took her by hand, and pulled her into the middle of the great circle. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Was the hunter mocking them, or had he gone mad? He had chosen one of the king's daughters, the girl everyone called the Buffalo Woman because of her mishappened body with its huge hump. Bring it Sologun to the king of Tao, the hunter said. This is the one I have chosen and would like for a wife. The king could not control his laughter at the hunter's choice, made from all the beautiful madness. The general laughter spread throughout the crowd. Insults were hurled by the rejected maidens, and ridicule was heaped upon them by all. The brothers left the very day, pursued by the mockery of the people of Tao. As they left, they kicked the dust from their feet, vowing never to return there again. They escorted Solon, the buffalo woman, away from the Tao and started on their return to their own village. On the path, yeah, on the path home, the young hunters slowed their pace to ease the journey of Sologun and the buffalo woman. She was weeping for she was leaving her home. Even though her villagers and her own family were ridiculed her, she was said to be leaving the only home she had ever known. But soon her tears dried and she reflected upon the moment when the handsome young hunter had chosen her out of all the beautiful girls in the world or on earth. It was the sort of moment that she would always hold precious in her stories of memories. But she was a daughter of the king, and she knew that her destiny was partly determined by her spiritual double. Was she to become the wife of a mere hunter? Hmm. The three spoke along the trail, so Lagoon was put in good spirits by the kindness of the young hunters. As night about to fall, they began to search for a village where they could stay. Excuse me. Hospitality is freely offered to a stranger in Africa, and two brothers were offered one hut and Sologun another. Later that night, the older brother said, Aren't you going to sleep with your wife tonight? You are the one who is victorious over the buffalo. And the younger brother said, But you are the eldest. You know, that is not befitting for me to take the wife before you. So later that night, after the village was asleep, the older brother, Oluwambe, went into the hut where Sologun slept. Luambe lay down beside her, but in her sleep she was protected by her spiritual double. Every hair on her body sharpened and lengthened because like quills of a porcupine, which prevented anyone from touching her. Of course, Oluwambe called upon his spirit double too. The two spirits battled throughout the night. but Sogolun's was much more powerful. In the morning, Oluwambe returned to the hut half dead from weariness and rejoined his brother. I couldn't do anything, he cried angrily. Let me pause real quick. Let me pause real quick. Y'all got to understand what's going on right now. The two brothers have come to an agreement that I ain't going, you going. Nah, I ain't going, you going. You the oldest. All right, man, I'm going. Bruh, get over there. He lay next to her. What do you think? And when every man get in the bed next to a woman, what do y'all think is on the man's mind at that time? He finna hold that L. Because remember, she butt ugly. But the clash of the spiritual doubles that you could perceive it to be anything, right? It's like a woman coming to bed with jogging pants on. You're like, man, she ain't trying to give me none. You feel me? Yeah, so it could be that type of situation. But anyway, I couldn't do anything, he cried angrily. You were the one who triumphed over the buffalo, so it is up to you to make her your wife. Fine, he answered. I shall go to her tonight. They continued on their journey, and at night they again found a village and provided them with huts and food. In the middle of the night, the younger brother Olami slipped into her hut. As he crossed the threshold, he was caught in her magic spell. He froze in an upright position, half and half out of the doorway, and slept that way until this morning. He woke and returned to tell his brother of his misfortune. She is a very powerful sorceress. Her spells are most powerful than any we know. I failed miserably with her, just as you did. Luwamba bitterly agreed. So Sogolun is not for us. So let me end it right here. They decided to try nothing more and continued their journey. Oluwama had been over the moon with joy just a few days before. Now he wished that he had not followed the request of the old woman to choose Solon. He could have chosen from the most beautiful women who wanted to be his wife. Now he would be remembered only for a choice of a buffalo woman. Never would he have an extraordinary son from her who would perpetuate his name. Such was the bitterness he now felt. All right. So the plot's thickened. All right. You got a very short story early on about this whole situation of this woman coming and this this diviner telling him how things would transpire. Now y'all should have putting two and two together to see, all right, so she ain't for the hunters, as they agreed. She ain't for us. She for the streets. She for somebody else. But we gonna take her with us though, right? Yeah, got him. Hey man, y'all tripping. Chavy tripping. Yeah, you have missed a lot. So King Magan was once again seated under the silk cotton tree. It was a hot day, and his beautiful wife Sasoma had brought some water to him and sat down to enjoy the shade. She had given birth to a daughter almost 2 years before, and she had regained her beauty. Her attention was now on her husband and their happiness together. Two young hunters and a young maid approached. 2 years later, the queen got up and went inside the palace and was required of her when strangers came. A flash of anxiety swept through her when she saw the woman covered by a veil coming down the path between two hunters. Would her husband remember the prediction made long ago? When the strangers were a few steps away from the king, they bowed. Great king, we are hunters from far away. The young girl is from the dial, and we present her to you, for we think she is worthy to be a king's wife. The girl was kneeling in front of the king with a veil hiding her face, bowing and could not conceal the hump from deformed her shoulders and back. The king was embarrassed and stared a long time at his jelly, searching for advice. The jelly broke the silence by asking them to tell of how they happened to leave the dial with the maiden, and the hunter sat down to tell their story. They told the old woman at the river the killing of the buffalo and the choice of the buffalo woman over a beautiful maiden to die. They discreetly told nothing of their own attempts at trying to marry her. The king and his Jaled knew this extraordinary woman was the one prophesied. She must become the king's wife and mother of his son. So the king ordered a gift of cola nuts for the young hunters for bringing her to the king. The hunters were also given two beautiful maidens of the king's villages to take home as their own wives. Hmm. The date of the wedding was set for next Wednesday, a lucky day, and throughout the 12 villages of the kingdom, the drums announced the marriage. All of the important dignitaries were invited. The royal family gave gifts to celebrate the weddings, rice clothes, and even gold. Oxen were sacrificed. Each village sent a troupe of dancers and musicians to participate in the celebration on the second marriage of the king. So Alun, the buffalo woman, stayed with an old aunt of the king until the wedding. In preparation, she received the finest care and pampering. Along with the river's edge, she sang in a bath with her age mates, who would become like sisters to her. She got marriage advice from old women while they gave a ritual hot, then cold bath. Let me stop. All right. One thing about this story, for those of you who aren't pretty much familiar with rites of passages and in West Africa, more specifically, up and down that coastline, the different tribes, right? Um, this is common for when a young lady is getting prepared to marry or she is of age to be married and so on and so forth. It is very common for her to be taken elsewhere, stay elsewhere, and go through a ritualistic phase with other women and be pampered and bathed and dressed and being prepared for marriage, and then she is ready when it is set. So I want you to think about the culture, the traditions that are being explained in this story. It told the story of the hunters, and it told you about the gear that they actually wore and that they were from far away and yada yada yada. Right? You got to remember that they told the story of all the other things that's transpired. You had someone doing divination. You're having all of these cultural and traditional elements are being expressed in this story, and we ain't even got to the real deal yet because we haven't gotten to Sundiata at all. We're getting up to that point now. Yeah, they quadrupled. Yeah, they came up. Boys came up for real. Now in marriage, there are beautiful days, and inevitably there will be bad days. Your dignity as a woman makes it imperative that you accept either kind with a smile. Your honor requires that you offer your heart and your body only to your husband, and you are to submit them to him absolutely. If you drink honey water with your husband, be prepared to drink the bitter herbs as well. This will make certain the success of your children in this life and your place in heaven in the next. Her hair was braided and her skin was oiled and perfumed. Throughout the night before the wedding, there was a great feast by the women. It was intended to give the departing maiden a final happy memory that she would be able to fall back upon in the moments of anguish during her future life as a wife and a mother. So Balloon was weeping alone in the center of the circle of her friends as the roosters crowed the morning. Today she would no longer be a girl and her life was a woman would begin. She was dressed completely in white, hmm, with a large veil over her head. Remember, white is significant, as they say, right? Her age mates sang the bride's departure, song punctuated with clapping. Her wedding day had come. She headed a procession down the path towards the palace. Women flanked her path and viewed everything and sang. It has always been so. Men had no say in the matter and were pushed to the back, as was the custom during the procession. Cousins of the groom picked up the bride and ran, carrying her on the shoulders in the crowds of in the palace as the crowd cheered. The bride had been delivered to her husband. Outside the palace walls, the celebrations continued, and the dancers and singers were rewarded. More gifts were distributed. The celebration continued throughout the day and night. But that night, Sologun was reluctant to give herself to her husband. While she slept again, her guardian spirits took over. When the king came near, the hair on her head, on her skin, again became like the needles of a porcupine. The king wrestled with her sorcerer all night, in spite of a great power of his own totem animal, the lion. He was unable to conquer the buffalo woman's spirit. The next day, the king Magan and his jelly went back to a blacksmith soothsayer who had great powers. Magan described his dilemma. Looking at the thirsty stones that he used to divine problems, the soothsayer said, within her body, she has the power of two spirit guardians, the buffalo and another one. You must find out which other animal is within her. Then you can conquer that spirit. That night, Sologun's spirit again protected her. The king sprinkled sand into the patterns of the floor. Sologun fainted, and under a spell, he was able to pull from her the name of her other spirit, the panther. This was the source of her strength. The king's lion spirit challenged the panther, and in the spiritual battle, the lion won. When Sologun awoke, she was already Magun's wife. That very night, she conceived. That panther got significance. Y'all better understand what that panther mean. Matter of fact, Ben, I know you listening. What that panther mean? Susoma, King Mungi's first wife, resented her husband from taking another wife, even though the Quran allowed it. How could you? She cried to her husband. Do you prefer that ugly buffalo to me? Magan said, woman, baby, don't you worry, I still love you. I'm only trying to make an alliance with the people of Dao. To make up for it, go and take 10 cows from my herd. They are yours. But don't disrupt my marriage to her. Sasami angrily departed, but plotted against Sogolun with a few of her closest friends who knew witchcraft. When she heard that Sologun was pregnant, her jealousy became blind, and she was planning to poison the buffalo woman and her child. But on the way to the house of Sogolun, she saw 3 owls descend from the roof to protect the expectant mother. She knew that nothing could be done with the owls of sentinels. She bided her time. Very well, then, she said. Let the child be born and we'll see. Her child will be much more vulnerable than she. Near the moment of delivery, the sky grew dark with clouds, even though it was the dry season. The sun was hidden, and 2 cyclones appeared in the skies, if a battle twisting and confronting each other. Thunder and lightning crackled, and everyone ran for shelter. Rain started falling, and it blanketed the earth. And then the rain stopped suddenly, and the sun appeared. It was at the very moment the midwife came out of Sogolun's house to announce, Bagan, that he was the father of another boy. Drums announced the birth of the boy throughout the village, and the celebration singers and balafoons carried the praises of the king and his new son. The king rejoiced in his new son, child of the lion and child of the buffalo and panther. He opened 6 granaries and distributed rice throughout the village. Later, he went to see his wife's new son and wife along with his jale. They were amazed to see that the child had a full set of teeth and eyes that focused upon whoever was in the room. Truly, this is a good omen. The Jale said. Both mother and father were so proud. On the 8th day, let me say this real quick. What makes this story so unique is because of the specifics. This story is told by many Jale griots of Mali. Now, if they can expound on a story and pass it down, as often as this, I want you to think about Mansa Musa. Just for this second. Was Mansa Musa really that guy, no griot speaks of he. And we might deal with him another day. But let me continue. On the 8th day after the child's birth, the naming ceremony was held. You have to remember, let me pause. We have shows on the Masi that talk about the culture and the tradition of West Africans. The naming ceremony is a big deal. They do these on specific days. They don't name the child right when they come out of the womb, right? They wait until something gives them the right to go ahead and name the child. Now, you want to go back and look at a bill that I did, and Kofi may have done a bill on the name and stuff. It's significant. No matter the tribe, we get it in. So again, so on the 8th day, you get a naming ceremony. The Jaleh or Griot, for you who don't know, spoke before the crowd in praise of this child and gave a prayer to Allah. So let me speak in this bullshit tone. Excuse me, children, my bad. May Allah grant him long life. Amen. May Allah grant him good health. Amen. May Allah make him a good king. Amen. Then the female Jaleh shouted to the child's multiple names selected carefully to carry his proud lineage from his great-grandfather through his father and mother. But the name which he was called and remembered by was Sundiata, the Lion King. His many names were whispered in the ears so that he may remember them. The king sacrificed sheep and bulls and distributed their meat along with the rice bead to the cheering villages. The feast was the last in memory. But Allah has mysteries which no one can understand. Some will be lucky and live an easy life untouched by sorrow. Others will be marked for suffering. You can do nothing about it. Such is the will of Allah. The infant Sundiata had a slow and difficult childhood. At the age of 3, he still crawled, dragging himself along the ground like a crocodile crawling on a sandbank. He had none of the beauty of his father, a head so big that he seemed unable to support it. Large eyes would stare wildly whenever anyone entered the mother's house. He did little other than sit in the middle of the house, except when he was hungry and he would drag himself out to rummage about in search of food among the calabashes waiting to be washed. He seemed to be always in a bad mood and scared the other children away. He spoke little and his serious little face never relaxed into a smile. Malicious tongues began to be wagged. What 3-year-old has not yet taken his first steps? Why could he not speak? What 3-year-old was not the center of attention, receiving the returning love of those around him? Was this the great son prophesied, or was this a cruel joke on the king? Or was there witchcraft involved? The king's wife first rejoiced in Sundiata's infamy. Her own son, the Quran, was already 11. He was a fine boy and had begun his initiation in manhood training. Whenever she remember, rites of passage is significant. So by a certain age, this is why we send the older son into his training. Whenever she passed by Sologun, she would make comments like, I prefer a son who walks on his 2 legs to a lion that crawls on the ground. And she would laugh a wicked laugh that went straight through Sogolun. Sogolun was greatly troubled by her son's infirmity. She tried all the talents as a sorceress, but none avail. Nothing she did could strengthen her son's legs. No herbs, no ointments, no magical incantations. No herbs, no ointments, no magical incantations. The king himself lost hope in Sundiata. How impatient man is. Perhaps, if he had had another son, he thought, it was during this time that Sogolun became pregnant again, but brought forth only a daughter. The years passed and still Sundiata did not walk, nor did he seem to try. The king wondered, could Sundiata possibly be the one of whom the hunter had predicted such a glorious future? The king Morgana, his Jale, again went to the blacksmith soothsayer. This time he used 2 flat stones to help him see beyond the mysteries of the world. Filling stones, he said, When the seed germinates, growth is not always easy. Great trees grow slowly, but they plunge their roots deep into the ground. Your son has three guardian spirits in one body: the lion, the buffalo, and the panther. He is not yet able to assimilate them. Be patient. But the king continued to feel deceived and ridiculed on the account of Sundiata. He took a third wife at this time, even though he was now old. His wife, remember now, Sundiata's got how many brothers and sisters? Remember, at the beginning, they told you how many he got. So now you can see it all coming to fruition. He got two siblings, right? He got a sister and a brother by the first wife. His mama had him, and now a sister. So there's 4 kids. What you think about to happen with the third wife? That's gonna total out the number of brothers and sisters that he had overall. We're going to see, right? He took on a third wife at this time, even though he was now old. This third wife produced a son, but even this did not make him happy. And sadly, too, this wife died, leaving her infant named Manding Bore motherless. Susami would have nothing to do with him, but Sogolun took him as her own, raised the child as Sundiata's brother. Magan died, never seeing his son Sundiata walk. And with the death of Magan, the eldest, the son of Sasami, was named as the king, as was the custom. And Sasami became powerful in her new position as well. Told you. Now, Sasami no longer considered the 7-year-old Sundiata a threat, but her hatred for Sogolun continued unrelenting. Sogolun, her daughter, and Sundiata had received Manding Bore, were driven into the poorest section of the palace. They received only meager portions of food, the leftovers from Sasami's meal. One day, Sogolun tried to be kind to Sasame and went to her home asking for some baobab leaves to season a stew of chicken feet. Sasame smugly said, "My son, for whom no great destiny was prophesied, but who can walk, run, and jump, brings me baobab leaves every day, whereas yours, supposed to be superhuman, drags himself around like a lizard and can't even gather leaves for you. Here, take these. Go and feed your good for nothing son. Make him big and fat." She laughed that diabolical laughter which jealous women know how to use so well, and threw the leaves at Sogolun. Sogolun felt wretched and turned, saying to herself, "I would rather my children and I starve to death than to take the baobab leaves if we must accept her insults with them." She covered her face to hide her tears and hurried back to the house. Sundiata, playing on the floor of the house, saw his mother coming in. "What's the matter, mother?" he asked, sensing her troubled spirit. She said nothing, but her muffled cries told him everything. He felt great pity for her. Resolutely, he announced, "Today, I am going to walk." Yeah, it's detailed. We getting it in. We getting it in. Rejoice. Today would be like no other day. Today was the destiny of the day of destiny. The blacksmith soothsayer knew. A huge iron rod was brought by 6 blacksmith apprentices and dropped outside Sundiata's hut, as you can see in the picture below. Sundiata crawled on all fours to the iron rod, so Galoon followed him out of her hut. A small crowd started gathering near the iron rod. He picked it up with little difficulty and stood it vertically. Then he pulled himself up on his knees. "Arise, young lion, roar, and let the bush know that from now on it has a master," cried the blacksmith. Among the crowd was Sasami, who stood with her arms crossed and with a haughty smile. Sundiata's sister and even Sasami's daughter, Nana, encouraged him to stand until she was silenced by her mother. So his sisters is rooting for him. Both sisters, even his mother, the one who hated him. All right. Then a deadly silence gripped all those present. Sundiata lowered his head as if examining his feet. Then he revived this stare at the rod. The next moment, his muscles swelled, and embracing the rod, he hauled himself up, his head thrown back, his eyes half closed, his teeth clenched, his legs pulled under him, and they started trembling like rice stalks whipped by the wind. In a supreme effort, he managed to stretch himself completely upright. Then, releasing the rod, he found himself planted on his own two legs. Soon the silence turned to joy. There was chanting and clapping, and with every step the crowd praised him more. Not far from the place where the baobab tree, it was toward the tree that Sundiata slowly stumbled, leading a cheering crowd. Once there, he turned to his mother and said, "Mother, did you ask your son for some leaves?" Then, then with a mighty tug, he uprooted the tree, put it over his shoulder, and carried it back in front of his mother's hut where he dropped it. From this day on, it is from in front of your hut that the woman of our town, including Sasama, shall come to get her supply of leaves. The lion had awakened. Mm-hmm. What y'all think they saying right there? All of that had to happen for that boy to get on his own 2 feet. Or was he maturing mentally to be who he is now? Let's see. Sundiata was now 10 and a boy full of strength. His arms had the strength of 10, and he inspired fear in grown men. He already had the authoritative way of speaking which belongs to those destined to rule. From his mother, he was taught the secrets of animals and medicinal plants and of magic. The son of his father's Jale, Balafasiki, became his own Jale, who taught Sundiata the history of his people and the rules of warriors' conduct. Let me pause. Because this name, Balafasiki, is very important in retrieving and passing down the stories from his father, right? Who was the king's Jale. Now, again, Jale means griot. So now you begin to see how the stories can be passed down. Now, is there some sauce on it? Absolutely. All these stories gonna have sauce on it. You know what I mean? Mythically and all of that stuff, because they tell the stories in a way that will always be in support of the king, the ruler. And they try to make them to where they can be remembered and told again, repeated. Now, Sundiata grew in popularity from day to day, and he was surrounded by a gang of children the same age as himself. And every day, Sasama hatred of Sogolun and Sundiata's increased. She became more and more apprehensive about her own son's throne. Even now, at the age of 18, her son, Dakaran, was weakened under the influence of his mother. Sasame ruled in his own name, and she wanted to kill Sundiata. Think of Game of Thrones, y'all. One night, Sasama met with the 9 great Suba sorcerers of Mali. When the 9 old hags were seated in a semicircle around her, she said, "You who rule supreme at night and have nocturnal powers, oh, you who can put an end to one's life, will you help me? I want to kill Sundiata. His destiny runs counter to my son's." Mother of the king replied one Suba, "Sundiata has done us no wrong. Why should we bring him to death? You are wrong. He and his mother are evil and have no respect for you. Tomorrow, go to his mother's vegetable patch where Sundiata stands guard. You will see how vicious he is." "That's a clever idea," said one of the super sorcerers. They agreed to test Sundiata and the queen, gave them a reward grain of the royal granaries and the cows from the royal herds. Sundiata got up the next morning, met with the companions. They decided to go out for hunting for the day. On his way home, he passed his mother's vegetable patch. There he found the 9 women stealing vegetables. They pretended to run away like thieves who had been caught red-handed. "Stop, stop. You poor old women, don't run. This garden belongs to all," he said. Then he and his companions filled the gourds and old bags with the vegetables. Each time you need food, he told them, come back and take what you need without fear. Mm, killed them. The old women stood in amazement. We came here to test you, Sundiata. We have no need for of your vegetables. We can do nothing against the heart full of kindness. Forgive us. Beware of the queen mother. She wishes you harm, warned one old woman. Then the 9 subas disappeared. When Sundiata returned home, he told his mother what happened. Sogolon knew that her son's life was threatened. She would have to be more careful and use more of her magical powers to protect him. That night, the garden's owls returned perched at the doorway to prevent the harmful magic of others. When Susoma learned that Sundiata was still alive and protected by the guardian owl, she knew that the magic of Soul Lagoon and Sundiata was too powerful. She had to find another way to get rid of him. Here go an important name in the history. Departure from Nyani. That name's important. Within a year, it became time for Sundiata to go into manhood training. For months, Sundiata boys of this age were initiated into the secret knowledge of the master hunters and warriors. Within him was Bala Fasiki, his Jale, who further trained him in the knowledge of leadership and nobility. They became closest friends and they knew that their destinies were intertwined. One day, when Sundiata was out on a hunting trip, Sasami once again saw an opportunity to get rid of her son's rival. She told Takaran, we will send the Bale Fasiki, Sundiata's Jale and friend, away from him. We can send him to the king of the Soso on a mission. Sundiata cannot question that. He will be left without his true friend and advisor. Out of anger and humiliation, he will leave our village. Mother, Dakaran asked, are you sure? Balafasiki is known for his wisdom. Is so it's right to take him away from my brother and send him to Soso? The king of Soso is a very cruel man, and Balafasiki may not survive. You are king now and don't even know a threat to your rule. When Sundiata grows up, do you think he will not compete with you? Get rid of him now while you still can. When Sundiata returned and heard about Dakaran's decision, he confronted his half brother, the king. He remained calm, but his eyes flashed angrily. Any other 12-year-old child would have lost his courage in front of an armed guard with a drawn sword. But he grabbed his brother by the collar and said, you have stolen my Jale. Give him to me. By our father, King Magan. If you needed to send someone to Soso, why didn't you send your own Jale? Dakaran was angered and intimidated by his question. I am the king now. Sasami had spoken for him so often that he was ashamed to tremble before a youngster. He thought of stomping him out like a beetle. You must leave here, he finally shouted. Sundiata left the palace. So Olun heard the news. Yes, let us leave here, she said. Sundiata, you will return to reign when you are a man, for that is your destiny. Then she prepared her daughter and her adopted son, Manding Bore, to leave the next morning. At the second crowing of the rooster, they left their hut with the possessions on their backs. Sundiata surrounded himself with a wall of silence as they departed. But Sogolun turned towards Asama's room in the palace and shouted, ever since the death of my husband, my children and I have been victims of your bullying. You ridiculed my son when he couldn't walk, tried to use magic against him, and now you have taken away his Jale. What else do you have in mind? We will never know because now we will leave. The palace and the whole city of Niani are yours alone. In her resentment, Sogolun's voice carried throughout the palace and beyond, but Sasami stayed silent and fearful within. Sogolun turned her eyes to the heavens and said, ever since I was married 13 winters ago, there has been no end to our suffering and humiliation. They left Niani without saying farewell to anyone. Their hearts were too sad for leave taking. They tasted the bitterness of exile. Their feet plowed upon the dust on the path as they walked. They suffered insults from their own countrymen. Doors were shut against them, and they were chased away from each village. No one dared to help them for fear of the queen. As they trudged down the path, they were escorted only by a chorus of crickets. It's going down, man. What's up, Rob? What you mean? What makes them think they can now? Re-ask that question in reference so I can address it. 2 days journey downstream on the river Niger, they came to a home of the sorcerer king of Jalimba. They were greeted pleasantly enough in words, but the welcome was full of mistrust. Yet it is the custom to offer hospitality to travelers, so the king invited them to stay. The palace had 70 spacious rooms arranged in amazing thick walls, oil lamps in the labyrinth of this mysterious dark palace. There were many servants, and so Alun's family was made comfortable. It was here they settled. Sundiata and his brother Mandarin Bore became friends with the other children of the palace. They enjoyed the games and hunting and other boys. But even in their kindness and hospitality they received as Jalimba, they felt torn between their present and past homes. 3 months later, two messengers secretly came to the palace. They were from Queen Sasamis with the promise of gold if they killed uh, Sundiata. All this was overheard by a daughter of the king and a friend of Sundiata and Mandarin Bore. Early the next day, she went to find Mandarin Bore. Late last night, she said, messengers spoke to my father about Sundiata. They came from Mali and offered my father much gold. I didn't hear all they said. I can imagine, Mandarin Bore replied. He knew he had to warn his brother of a plot on his life. Oh, kill him while you can. She want to kill him. Okay, so if you missed it earlier, she want him dead because he threatens her son. Remember, she is the first wife. She wanted her son to rule. It's Sundiata, which is the second son. He threatens the throne. Remember to think Game of Thrones. When you're hearing this, think Game of Thrones. Or you could think of the story of the Lion King, because really the origins of the Lion. Well, never mind. I won't get into that. Tonight, my father would surely cause Sundiata to come to a game of Wari, she continued. He is a great sorcerer and his powers in the game of Wari. His skills were revealed to him by a guardian spirit. Don't tell my father anything I have said or he will kill me. Then she ran back to the palace. From a distance, Sundiata was watching his younger brother with the princess and teased him. I see you are fond of the daughter of the king. Mandibore responded with a laugh. If you want to tame the lion, you must be on good terms with the lion cub. The two boys continued exchanging proverbs, for men's knowledge is contained there. When children use proverbs well, it is a sign they have learned wisely from their elders. Sure enough, the night Sundiata was called to the kings in the chamber. On the walls were outstanding weapons and magical fetishes. In the middle of the room was the king seated on a cowhide. In front of him was a game board with small pebbles. Unafraid, Sundiata entered the dimly lit room. He was moving toward his destiny and did not know what fear was. What beautiful weapons you have, sire, he said. He seized a sword to begin defense with it against an imaginary foe. The king was astonished and watched the skills of an extraordinary child. Then the young prince put the sword back and said, You sent for me? I am here. Sit down, said the king. It is my habit to invite my guests to play at Warri, but I have an unusual condition. If I win, and I surely will win, I kill you. Without being upset, Sundiata responded confidently, And if I win, in that case, the king laughed, I will give you what you wish, but you should know that I always win. All I ask for is that sword hanging on the wall, Sundiata replied. Very well, said the king, and began to put the pebbles into each of the holes. As he did this, he chanted, Wari is the invention of a hunter. I am unbeatable in this game. I am called the Exterminator King. And Sundiata, taking the pebbles from another hole, continued to chant. As he took his turn, in the past, guests were honored. Gold came only yesterday, but I come before. Someone has betrayed me, the king roared, knowing that Sundiata had learned of his deadly plot. No, king, Do not accuse anyone, said the child. It is nearly 3 moons that I have been living with you, and you've never suggested a game of worry before. Allah protects the guests. Confused and shaken by being discovered in a sinister plot, the king said, "You have won, but you will not have what you asked for. And I turn you out of my town. Leave at once." Sundiata rose and bowed politely while staring calmly at the nervous king. "Thank you for your hospitality for almost 3 months, but I will return," he said, glancing again at the sword. Then he turned and left. So once again, Sogolun and her children trod the path of exile, suffering under the heat of day and night and the day and the chill of the night. They finally arrived at Tabon. This region is in the mountains and is inhabited by blacksmith magicians and warriors. The king of Tabon was old and wise. He had heard of the family's difficulties. He advised them to seek protection of the caravan of the Arab merchants who were leaving in a few days for Ghana. In the meantime, they were welcomed into the palace and honored the guests. Sundiata struck up a special friendship with Fran Kamara, the son of the king of the high to the throne. Fran Kamara invited the boys on a hunting party. Out in the bush, the youngsters talked like men. "When I go back to Mali," Sundiata said, "I will pass through the Tabon and he will go victoriously to Mali together. Between that time and now, we will have grown up." Hold on, y'all. Okay, yeah. Caleb. All right. So you can already see when he go back to Mali, it's on. "The army of Tabon will be under my command by then," Fram Kamara said, "and blacksmiths are excellent warriors. I will make you a great general," Sundiata said. "We will travel through many kingdoms and emerge the strongest of all." The exile of my family took to the road again. The king of Tabon had given them horses in the caravan, headed north across the savannah to where the sands covered the land. Tabon was very far from Ghana, but the merchants were very good to Sogolun and her family. It was during this long trip that Sundiata heard about the powerful king of the Soso and the Somogaru, whom he would fight one day. Sundiata knew that his Jale, Balo Facet, had been sent to Soso. He learned that Samugara was the richest and the most powerful king, and even the king of Ghana had to pay him tribute. He was also a man of great cruelty. Once again, in the kingdom of Ghana, they came to the city of Wagadu. The king greeted them by saying, welcome, royal family of Mali. My palace is your palace. The friendship which unites Ghana and Mali goes back to a very distant age. We are cousins." In the comforts of the palace, Sogolon recovered quickly from exhaustion. But after a year, she became ill. The king decided to send Sologun to his cousins, the king of Mima. Mima was the capital of a great kingdom of the river Niger, not far from Dao, Sogolun's first homeland. Surely, he thought, the air from the river would restore her health. Traveling with merchants by the camel caravan, right? The blue people. Got accustomed to riding the animals which were unknown in Mali. Always eager to learn, Sundiata asked for the caravan travelers many questions. They were well informed people. Sundiata learned about the lands beyond Ghana, the lands of the Arabs, and his own ancestors, Bilal, and the faithful servant of Prophet Muhammad. He learned also about Alexander the Great, the conqueror of a vast empire, but it was with terror that the merchant spoke of Samugara or of Soso, who robbed merchants of everything when he was in a bad mood. Before arriving at Mima, a great escort was sent out to meet the travelers. Archers and spearmen formed in a double line to welcome Sogolun and her family. They were given rooms in a wing of a great palace. As usual, Sundiata made his presence felt among the young princes of Mima, and he gained their respect and friendship. The king himself could hardly take his eyes off the young prince. He had no son of his own and was impressed with the greatness of confidence in someone so young. Could this be an adopted hire? Years passed and Sundiata grew. His body became stronger and he shot up like a young tree. His misfortunes had made him wise, made his mind wise. The king of Mima recognized Sundiata's great strength and leadership. He asked Sundiata to join him as a warrior. Sundiata was an agile as a panther and a noble as a lion and ready to attack as a buffalo. By 18 years of age, Sundiata had already proven himself as a great warrior. The king of Mima, who had no son of his own, thought of Sundiata as his own successor. But as Sundiata grew stronger, his mother Songolon became weaker. One day, Songolon called Sundiata to her bed. My destiny is finished. Yours is about to begin. Your life lies before you like a beautiful river. It is nearly time for you to return and claim your rightful position as the king in Mali. Your destiny is not here. Remember, we had to run away like thieves in the night because of Sasami and her son Dakaran. That is where you must take up the challenge. Better death than shame. Never forget that, my son. I should never forget that, my mother. It's better death than shame. Now, when Sundiata was away from his homeland, all the lands of the savannah had fallen under domination of Sumungara, the invincible king of Soso. After defeating the kings of Ghana, no one dared oppose him anymore. Sumungara was descended from the line of blacksmiths who had harnessed fire and taught men to work it with iron, and like all masters of fire, Sumungara was a great sorcerer. Sumungara had fortified the town of Soso with 3 walls. In the middle of the town was his palace with a 7-story tower that loomed over the thatched huts. Let me show it to y'all. All right, there you go. That's in the middle of Mali. His fetishes had terrible power, and all the kings trembled before him. He could deal with a swift death to whomever pleased. So Mugara felt that he was untouchable, and was indeed no man had the power of the sorcerer king. He was invulnerable to his arrows, they bounced right off of him. In war, he had never been defeated until years before Sasama and Dakaran had tried to keep their kingdom safe from Samugara. They had sent Bale Fasiki Sundiata's Jale to stay at Samugara's palace. Sasama had sent her own daughter and the beautiful Nana to him as a bride. They had hoped these gifts of Nana and Bala Fasiki would buy them peace. But Samugara recognized that the young king's weakness and easily conquered his land. Rather than fight, cowardly Dakaran scampered off into the neighboring forest, taking his mother with him. The people of Mali were without a leader. And what had become of Nana and Balasiki, well, they knew of their people suffering, but bided their time. They lived in Soso in the palace of Sumungara. Even though the king had 300 wives, Nana had become his favorite. She knew that she must become close to the king in order to learn of his powers. Balafasika had also learned of the king's respect because of his good advice and wisdom, and so on. They waited. One day when the king was away, Balafasiki snuck into the most secret chamber of the palace tower. He was amazed at what he saw. On the walls were human skins stretched like trophies, and one covered Samungara's throne in the middle of the room. 9 human heads formed a circle around the huge sacrificial clay jar filled with water. There was evidence of orgies of blood and knives, and the room was full of idols. Perched above the bed were 2 guardian owls with their eyes partially open, sleepily observing the intruder at the door. As Balafasiki entered, a huge yellow and white snake lifted its head from the water in the jar. Bala, who was also a master of sorcery, recited magic incantations, and the snake safely slid back into the water. So frightened was Balafasiki from the horrors of the chamber that he tried to scream, but no sound came out of his throat. To keep him from shaking, he called out the magic spell, and his terror suddenly vanished. It was at that moment that he saw the large balafon, his favorite music instrument, one in which he had been trained and over which he had special powers. The balafon before him was a balafon which his blacksmith and powerful sorcerer king Samugara played after each of his victories to accompany his own songs of praise for himself. Bala could not help feel a surge of joy. He sat down to play a few notes. With the little mallets, the wooden bars produced an extraordinary melody and a harmony at the slightest touch. As he played, the guardian owls opened their eyes and moved their heads at the sweet sounds. Hmm. The nine death heads began to come to life again. Yes, all those heads began to open their eyelids and lifted their lips in smiles. Even though Samogara was absent from his palace in Soso, he was mystically in touch with the baleful spirit. He knew that someone had come into the most private chamber. Furious, he dashed back to the palace and ran up to the steps of the high tower. He rushed into the room with his sword drawn, shouting, "Here we go. It is I, Balafasiki," the Jale calmly replied. Then he began to play in honor of the king, and his voice rang out in praise. The room filled with magically sweet sounds. The king was flattered by the praises of that captivated by the music. Did he not share the weaknesses of all the men? Samugara said, "I should never touch the balafon again. From now on, you shall be my jale, and it shall be your duty to play on the instrument after each of my victories." In this way, Samugara restored Sundiata's jale. War became inevitable. Here we go. Now, back in Mali, soothsayers whispered that the rightful hire would save them from their suffering under Samugara's rule. But there was the one who fled with his mother and brother and sister many years before. Some of the elders secretly sent out search parties to find Sundiata, son of the Buffalo woman. But where could he be found after these 6 years? Sundiata was now strong enough to fight his enemies. At the age of 18, he had distinguished himself in the army of King of Mima and had a loyal following of young warriors. One day, Sundiata's young sister went to the marketplace in Mima to buy some vegetables. There, she saw a woman selling baobab leaves and vegetables from Mali. How strange, his sister thought. We have never seen these vegetables in this far of a land. She spoke with the vegetable peddler. It was it has been so long since we have seen vegetables like these from Mali. I will buy some for our mother Sogolon, who is ill. The peddler said, "Thanks to Allah that we have found Sogolon and her children. Our journey is not in vain. Please let us speak to your mother." That night, the search party came to Sologun and Sundiata. "Allah, at last, we bring you sad news. So Mungara, the powerful king of Soso, has heaped death and destruction upon Mali. The king, Dr. Ron, has fled to Mali and is without a master. But the war is not finished. Warriors are waiting in the bush for a leader to return. Mali is saved because we have found you, Sundiata. The throne of your father awaits you. You are the cyclone that shall sweep the tyrant Samungara from the savannah forever." So Alone was overjoyed that her son was being called upon to greatness. She knew that the end of her mission in life and coincided with the beginning of Sundiata's. The night the great woman who had nurtured Sundiata died. The king was furious that Sundiata planned to leave Mima. After all, he had hoped that Sundiata would be his hire, the next king. How ungrateful he thought Sundiata was. In anger, he said, "You cannot leave here until you pay for the land to bury your mother in. If you cannot pay, you will have to take your mother's corpse with you." Sundiata's flamed. "Then I shall get the payment," he said, and stalked out the palace. Moments later, he returned with an armload of broken calabashes and pieces of pottery and debris. "This is your payment," he said, and Sundiata went to get ready for his mother's burial. "What does this mean?" the king asked of his advisor. "How can this be a payment for my land?" Sundiata lost his mind. "It means that if you don't let him bury his mother and go with peace between you and the value of your land, will be only this: he will destroy your kingdom. It will be where desert birds come to bathe in the dust." The king was afraid, and he finally realized that Sundiata must go and fulfill his destiny. He gave in to Sundiata's wishes and held a great burial to honor the mother Sologun. Then the king gave half of his own army to Sundiata. "We shall always be at peace, your kingdom and mine. I wish that you might be my successor, but this adopted home is not your own. May Allah be with you on your return." with a small but well-trained cavalry dressed in Muslim outfits. Sundiata set out to confront Samungara's forces. He wore a white turban and a long cape. He rode a magnificent horse at the head of his cavalry. The war drum sounded as they left Mima. The soldiers carried their lances and swords. A troop of archers followed them. But altogether, they still were small in number. The people of Mima cheered them as they left and wished them well. Sundiata's younger brother, Manding Bore, rode with him. Can we hope to win with such a small army, my brother? Numbers mean nothing. It is worth the counts. No matter how small a force may be, you can always find there enough vines to tie up a man. I shall clear myself a path to Mali. And off they rode. Not long after they crossed the border, they came across an army led by one of Samgara's sons. Sundiata prepared to attack that very day. The orders were given and the war drums began to beat. On his horse, Sundiata paraded in front of his troops and encouraged them. Then he led the charge, shouting his war cry. The soldiers of Soso were surprised by this sudden attack. They expected the battle to begin the next day. The lightning that flashes across the sky is slower than Sundiata swooping down on the warriors of Soso. Sundiata was in the mist like a lion among its prey. All around, Soso warriors fell from his sword as ripe fruits falls from a shaken tree. Then the son of Samugar returned into a flight to report to his father about the defeat at the hands of Sundiata. The army of Mali celebrated their first victory. News of the victory of Sundiata's triumphal return to the savannah spread as carried by the wind. Sons of Mali rallied to him and pledged their loyalty. Next, they were joined by the army of Tabon. Now, I want to stop real quick because when I tell y'all that Sundiata is the most uplifted person in Mali history, I hope that y'all are realizing and seeing why. Based on this particular story, there's no way that the figurehead or the usurper, Mansa Musa, who would come later down the line, would be even close to being revered. Can't nobody compete with this. But let me continue. Sundiata was greeted by his friend's friend who said, I renew my oath to you made many years ago. I pledge myself to conquer or to die by your side. We will free ourselves from the tyrant of Soso. The warriors of Mima, Tabon, and Mali shouted their approval, becoming one great army united in purpose. Other brave princesses came to pledge their loyalty to Sundiata. They performed the great feats of strength and bravery and were welcome under Sundiata's command. All the rebel princes who came to Sundiata were still in their youth. At the time when a human bursts into a life, their most brilliant meteor, like bravery, enthusiasm, and dedication, a meteor that loses its radiance with age. Within days, Samugara marched out to meet Sundiata. As usual, the son of Soloun wanted to battle right away. The king of Soso drew his men across a narrow valley with his troops of the slopes and the hills. Sundiata formed his cavalry in a tight square, leading the attack with his archers at the back. Samugara has perched high on a hill. He could be recognized by his helmet with many horns. And there go the mask you see of the Bamana people of Mali. The trumpets, drums, and balafons sounded and encouraged the warriors. Soon the valley disappeared in a cloud of red dust kicked up by thousands of feet and hooves without giving an inch of force as the Samugara stopped the wave of attack. Samugara gave a signal from the hill to blacksmith warriors to swoop down into the valley to encircle Sundiata. Without a word, Sundiata's square soldiers extended themselves into a rectangle. Everything had been foreseen. The change was so quick that Samugara's men halted and could not use their weapons from the rear. The archers began their task. Arrows fell on Samugara's forces like a rain of iron. The forces of Mali continued the attack with new strength. Samugara was still perched high on the hill. Sundiata left his soldiers behind and alone. He shot an arrow at the sorcerer king, but Samugara grabbed it in midair. He raised the arrow, waved it, and laughed. Then Sundiata threw his metal spear, but that only bounced off Samugara's chest. Ha, Sundiata, I am invincible. Then Samugara disappeared a moment later. He was across the valley on another hill. Sundiata could hear this taunting, laughing echoing down the valley. He reappeared closer to Sundiata. Now that I have already killed 9 kings, whose heads adorn my room, yours shall be put next to theirs. Prepare yourself for your death. Then he disappeared again before Sundiata's eyes. Sundiata was amazed at the power of the Sorcerer King. How can I defeat a man who can disappear and reappear where and when he likes? How can I conquer an invulnerable to my iron spear and my arrows? Clearly, other weapons are necessary. As the sun was setting, Sundiata was the master of the valley. And as others began to celebrate their victory, he could only wonder, how was Samugara able to escape me? Why is he invulnerable to my weapons? What is the secret of his powers? I'm going to walk it down for y'all real quick. Appreciate y'all still tapping in. Lamar, you late. We on the back end, man, of this modern history now. It's going down. This way it get good. And this is this epic is written a little bit more thorough than a lot of the other epics. And to bag it up, because y'all know I got the book. One of the books I got, got primary information in there, stuff like that. So we can bag it up. Now, Nana was Sundiata's half sister. She had grown up to have all the beauty that both her father and mother were known for. Sundiata had always been a loving brother to her. Nana shared none of her hatred or jealousy that her own mother and brother had for Sundiata. When her own brother Dr. Ron sent her to be a wife for the Samugara, at first she was angry, but when she saw the suffering of her people, she decided that she may be in a position to find the secret of the king's invulnerability. Samugara had 300 wives, but because of the beauty of Nana, became his favorite. Through beauty and guile, she gained a closelessness and a power over the king. She moved around easily in her web of lies, as at home in flattery and deceit as a fish in water. She would try to catch Samugara at his own game. One evening, she dressed herself into a most seductive way, and she went up to his tile room. She offered him wine, and her legendary beauty inspired the liveliest of passions. Drink my love, there is plenty of honey in it, my sweet king. So Mugara was in confident mood and was eager to hear more compliments. Ooh, don't look into my eyes, for no woman can bear the brilliance of your gaze, she sighed. You are the light of my sky. So Mugara drank another cupful as he smiled at his coy wife. She asked, do you find me as good as sweet as the wine? As sweet as a ripe papaya with juice that quenches thirst and flesh that satisfies hunger, he said as he pulled her to him. Oh, your arms, my lord. Tell me, are you a man or a supernatural being? Your arms have the strength of 10. What guardian spirits protected you and makes you so powerfully strong? Samugara's male pride was so flattered that he responded at once. I don't have one guardian spirit. I have 63 ancestral totems. I can take the form of 63 different animals. So that is why kings tremble before you. How right I was to marry a king as powerful as you. Next, Nana turned away, but not so much as to let her tears go unnoticed. Why are you crying? He asked. I'm crying because I am afraid you will abandon me one day. I love you so, and I can't live without you. Will you ever send me away? No, my pet. He called her pet, and he raised his cup once again to his lips. You are such a great man that I cannot resist you. Tell me if there is anything I should not do in case of his diminish your magnificent powers. Nana had cast her web and waited for what it would bring. Don't worry, he smiled. I can only be heard by the spur from the foot of a white rooster. Mm. I am so lucky to have you near me, and I will take good care of you that you have told me, she said as she smiled and put her head on his shoulders. So, the infamous Battle of Corinna. All right. And it goes like this. So Mugara's man, so now, his sister, she gonna tell him about the foot. But anyway, Samugara's main camp was several days' march to the north on the broad plains of Karina. Sundiata and his army advanced to Karina. More sons of Mali joined him. He gave the people hope that as a powerful sorcerer king could come to defeat, that the Samgara's kingdom would collapse under him like a horse worn out beneath his rider. Then they would be free. 2 days before the battle, two mysterious visitors came riding up to Sundiata. In disguise were Nana, his half-sister, and his Jale Balafasiki. My brother, Nana greeted him. We have escaped from Soso and now join you. I am your sister, and this is Bala, your Jale, returned to you. Is this Nana? He asked. You have grown so, and Bala, I have missed your advice and friendship as I grew. You both belong by my side. Sandiata saw Nana's eyes were bathed in tears. So great was her joy at the reunion. Oh, my brother, you know that I never wanted you to leave Mali. It was my mother who did all of that. I too was sent out. Now our homeland is destroyed, its inhabitants scattered. Many of our people have been carried off into captivity. Do not cry, my sister, said Sundiata. What happened was not your fault. Everything that has happened was destined. It was good for me to spend some years in exile. Exile inspires wisdom. That's how I feel right now, like I'm in exile. But Nana, tell him what you have learned, urged Bala Fasiki impatiently. My brother, Nana said, I must warn you that the evil king cannot be defeated by arrows or your spears. But know what I have learned. His magic can only be destroyed by the spur from the foot of a white rooster. Here, she said, as she handed him an arrow she had prepared. This will bring you victory. So, this is the secret. Molly will always be grateful to you, my sister, and accepted the arrow with increased confidence. On the eve of the battle, Sundiata ordered the slaughter of an oxen to supply a great feast to his soldiers, but while the feast filled their bellies, the soldiers were apprehensive before this great conflict in which many would die. Balafasiki said, let me talk to the men. Let my words fill their hearts. And so he began as they gathered around the great campfires. He says, kingdoms and empires have lifetimes like man. There are two born, grow, and disappear. Today, a new kingdom rises as one dies. Soso was the growth of yesterday, whereas Mali is for tomorrow. He reminded them of their great heritage and told them of their glorious future. He praised each of the kings who joined forces with Mali, and he told them of the prophecy of their leader, their general, and the son of the buffalo, lion, and panther, who would rule the savannah. Then he concluded, but these are just words. Power lies in deeds. Be men of action. Do not respond with your voice, but tomorrow carry out the deeds that will bring fame and glory to you and your ancestors. After Bala had inflamed their fighting spirit, each went to rest out to prepare for the morning task without fear. Sundiata was alone outside his tent at the moon rose. He heard the flapping of the wings and saw an owl perch on a nearby branch. It was one of the owls that Balafasiki had seen in the chamber of Samugara's tower, and it was sent as a messenger. Here's the dialogue between Sundiata and Samugara relied by the sorcerer bird. The owl says, behave yourself, little boy. I am the king of Mali. If you want peace, return to Mima. Sundiata, I will achieve my destiny here in Mali. It is you who will leave. The owl, I am the wild yam of the rocks. Nothing will make me leave Mali. Sundiata, I have master smiths who will shatter the rocks. Then, yam, I will devour you. Owl, I am the red hot cinder, one which you would burn the soles of your feet. Sundiata, I am the rain that will extinguish the cinder and wash it away. Sundiata grew tired of the battle with words. The diabolical little bird, go and tell your master that I wish no further speech with him. I am not a Jale. I am a man of action. Tomorrow I shall wage war. The owl flew away into the darkness. When left alone, Sundiata walked further out of his plains. There, he heard the sounds of animals. He heard the roar of a lion, the snarl of a panther, and the bellowing of a buffalo. Before the battle of the rebel princes heard of saw the guardian spirits too. Balafasiki saw the hawk, another the eagle, another a snake. The total animals was gathering to give power to the young warriors. At first light, the two great armies gathered facing each other across the plain. The drum sounded, the battle began. Sundiata's cavalry charged as the archers shot their barrage of arrows. Sundiata full armed advanced, swords clashed, hoofs beat, pounded and war drums thundered. The battle was in full swing. Sundiata saw Samungara at the crest of the hill, raising his bow. He shot the arrow fixed with the spur of the white roost. The arrow the arrow flew straight, but only grazed his shoulder. Immediately, Samungara felt his power leave him. Trembling, he let out a great cry. He looked up toward the sun. A great black bird flew over the battlefield, and he understood. It was the bird of misfortune, the bird of Karina, he muttered. He turned his horse head and took flight. The forces of Samugara saw the king leave, and they fled in return. It was complete victory of Sundiata. Sundiata pursued Samugara on his horse back up the mountain. He wanted to catch him alive. Throwing his spear, he made Samugara's horse fall. The old king picked himself up. Then a wild chase began on foot. Before him appeared a gaping cave, which seemed to draw him against his will. Sundiata footsteps surrounded close behind. Samugara entered the black cave when he disappeared into the mountain. Sundiata could not find him, and he shouted, "Come out, coward." A loud never echoed through the darkness in spite of his search. Sundiata found no trace of his enemy. He mounted his horse and turned back down the mountain. Sundiata returned to the battlefield. His forces had completely victorious, and the troops were forcing in the spectacular success. Days later, Sundiata laid siege to Soso, the spectacular city of the sorcerer king, and the drums sounded in the tide of soldiers moved forward. Warriors with swords, spears, and shields were in the first line. Warriors with ladders were in the second. The main body attacked a single gate with the flaming arrows battering the rams. The city was completely taken in short time. Sundiata was now in front of the awesome palace toward Balafasiki, who knew every inch of the palace, led him into the king's magic chamber. It had changed its appearance since the sorcerer had lost his power. The snake was writhing in its pains of death. Two owls were flapping pitifully on the floor. Samugara's seven-story tower with all its fetishes and idols was then burned, and Soso was destroyed completely. It was now a palace where only birds come to take their dust baths. As Sundiata and his army made their triumphal march back to his homeland, the festivals began. There was great rejoicing. The Lion King, Sundiata, was proclaimed emperor by the 12 kings of the savannah. 12 royal spears were stuck in the ground as a pledge to unity. This is the story of the Lion King, Sundiata, my children. Don't doubt my words. I will teach you of our time of greatness. The past is only the seed of the future. Yeah, boy. So, real quick, these are all the epics of Sundiata and the oral traditions that have been told by the many. But the most important one is this one right here. I have this one, right? This one is significant. This one is significant as it advances everything. But I just wanted to show everybody the sources. I did leave a gang of sources to everybody, so you actually can check this out. Now, let me stop sharing real quick because I want to show y'all something too. I gotta show y'all something different. Yeah, that's the story of Sundiata. Those who rocked out from start to finish, man, you got it. Those of y'all who caught the came in a little bit later, you know what I'm saying? I have to go back, but let me show y'all something real quick. I don't know if it's gonna show y'all. Well, it's gonna be in French. So I'm gonna show y'all a little bit of it. It's the play.
Mandingue. Yellen, vidéographe production et Malitoon.
Hold on. Why come I can't I don't know why I can't see it big. So let me go with
Tiré des légendes mandingues. Yellen, vidéographe production et Malitoon.
No, this ain't the one I want. I wanted the actual play. So hold up. Let me see if I can get the play. Because they play this thing all the way out, man. So they put a lot of energy and time in the Sundiata. This is why he the Lion King. He handle business like a real G. You feel me? So I don't hear none of that play about no Mansa Musa. The myth of Mansa Musa. I can't even get it. So see, it won't let me get to what I need to get there. So let me kind of move a little bit forward into another epic, but I wanted to kind of show y'all something. I'm not gonna read all of it, but this is just by a different author, right? And I wanted to kind of bring it to y'all attention. Hopefully you can see that pretty clearly because I did zoom in real close. All right, so I want to talk about this timeline right here. This is by Carol Thompson in the Empire of Mali. In 1076, they said Almoravid Berbers defeated the Empire of Ghana. In the early 1200s, some Ungara rules the fragmented Empire of Ghana and attacks King Gamba, but spares Sundiata's life. 1230, Sundiata becomes king of Mali. 1235 to 1255, Sundiata builds the Empire of Mali. Gold from Mali becomes a source of gold for Muslims in the European currency. 1255 to 1270, reign of Mansa. This is where the Mansas would rule. So after Sundiata builds the Empire of Mali, they become rich and wealthy. Then you will have this notion of the first Mansas. So you have Mansa Wali, Mansa Musa, you know what I'm saying? Mansa Mark, you have all of that transpiring, right? And then after the last Mansa, who is named after the first, the king of Sundiata's father, then you would have this political prowess take place, and then you would have a change from Mansas to Askias, and then you would have a reign of Askias and stuff like that. That would continue to reign and do all of that, and then things would, by the time 1400s, all this transpires. You start seeing the Mossi come kick their ass during the reign of Askias. Then the Portuguese arrived. That's a whole nother problem. And then you start seeing the collapse and things deter. So again, for everybody who don't know, Jele is a griot. They call Sundiata all these different names. Those are the other names that he is known by. There's the ancestral list. And I just wanted to show some of this to all of y'all. The family. Yeah. All that. So the lengths that they actually go to actually tell the story is pretty dope. But I gave everybody all all the information. I didn't go through every source, but I gave y'all all the information that you actually needed in regard to Sundiata. Now, I'm not gonna hold everybody up. I know some people might want to catch the replay, and this is pretty lengthy. It's a long, long epic, as it should be. But I do appreciate everybody tapping in, man. I know other people are probably live right now, but y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day. Your boy out.
Carter on the beat.